But the fact is, your experience and the way that you feel about a meal starts forming way before any food ever hits the table. Hospitality and front of house are what make the first impression, and honestly, a lot of times, the biggest impression. Hey there, Omaha. Welcome into another episode of Restaurant Hoppen. I'm your host, Dan Hoppen, and so often when we think about restaurants, we start with the food, and that's the main focus. But the fact is, your experience and the way that you feel about a meal starts forming way before any food ever hits the table. Hospitality and front of house are what make the first impression, and honestly, a lot of times, the biggest impression in a visit that you have to a restaurant. And I want to dive into that tonight and learn more about it. So I've got three excellent guests tonight. I've got Ron Mettler, Matt Brown, and Melissa Barnett. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so since we've got multiple voices here, here's what I would love to have each of you do. Start by introducing yourself, tell us where you work, and kind of give us your 30-second maybe philosophy on hospitality and the way that it shapes how you treat people in your restaurant. Matt, let's start with you.
Sure. My name is Matthew Brown. I am the general manager and advanced sommelier at Mertz Restaurant in the Old Market. I've been there for almost 15 years now and love what I do. I'm Nebraska born and raised, never intended to get into the restaurant industry. Happened chance into a part-time job when I was 21 years old and fell in love with it. I think what drives me for hospitality is there are very few jobs that you get to go to every day where your focus is making somebody else's day better. And that can be your coworker, your employees, but most importantly, the guests in the restaurant. I fell in love with that sense of hospitality and hosting people. Just so happens I get to work with a bunch of great people and also taste great food and wine all the time too, so it's a pretty good job.
My name is Melissa Barnett, and I have worked in hospitality for 30 years now. And kind of my philosophy is back to a quote, I don't know who said it, but basically like you can say whatever, you can do whatever, but people will always remember how you made them feel. And I feel like that's kind of what I bring to hospitality. Currently, I'm the new GM at Semo Pasta Wine in Fremont, and it's like Matt said, it's making people's day every day.
All right. My name is Ron Mettler. I've been pretty much better half of 16 years working at Dante, third-time GM there. For me, it is all about the experience. There's service and then there's hospitality. Everything's created like at the table and everything. And that's where I feed most of my energy, those that come in that want to escape. Just try to create some enlightenment and just joy and like give them a reason to be there, invest in them. So,
Matt, you could not have teed me up any better for the next question that I wanted to ask, because there are two words that a lot of times I think a lot of people think are synonymous, and that's hospitality and there's service. But they are different things. To you guys, what does hospitality mean, and how is it different from good service?
For me, service is very transactional. Like everything's a transaction. Like you can get it anywhere. You just want to get service. You're running food. That's the service part. The hospitality happens at the table. People come into a restaurant most of the time to escape like what's going on. They want an experience. So when you invest in your people and actually take the time to care and learn who they are, why they're there, what's going on, that's the experience that you're giving.
I completely agree with that. I was going to say, I don't know if I can say it any better than that. However, great service doesn't exist without good hospitality. Mm-hmm. And so they do kind of go hand in hand, but you're right. Service for me is a little bit more about the organizational side of it. You can give good service by being organized and doing your job properly and planning well, but you take it to the next level when you also combine it with great hospitality, where you're paying attention to significantly small details at the table and also to your guests and kind of trying to make their experience as personalized as possible. And that's when you really get to great, fantastic experiences. You have to have both.
Yeah, I really feel that, like you said, service is very transactional, and that exists everywhere. But for me, what really sets like good hospitality apart is blowing people's minds. It's my favorite thing when they come into the restaurant. And yeah, they're coming in for just a meal, but I want them to leave just with that feeling of like they can't wait to come back. And it wasn't just the food that made them feel that way.
And how do you do that?
Well, it's different for everyone. You really kind of have to get to read people, to understand what they're actually asking you for, what kind of experience they actually want without them maybe saying exactly what they want. And so just kind of picking up on different nonverbal cues. You know if people are coming in to celebrate a birthday or an anniversary, like that's very easy. It's when people are just out for dinner that makes it a little bit harder to make that just such a wow experience.
Yes, sometimes the best part of the meal comes in the part that they don't notice, right? You get to the end of the meal, and all of a sudden you're just like, wow, that was really great and smooth and fantastic. And it's not about always going over the top. It's about always caring. And so sometimes replacing a napkin when they don't even notice you're replacing a napkin, or placing the silverware on the other side because you notice they're left-handed. Little details that you can do throughout the meal that aren't life-changing, but by the end of the meal, you can just be out for a Tuesday night dinner and still have that great experience. That's just as important, maybe more important, than doing that big, over-the-top, celebratory kind of thing and making a big show of stuff.
Yeah.
A great example of that, I will never forget this. My first experience at Mertz, one of the former chefs there, he's not there anymore, but I don't even know how he found this out, but I'm like a hot sauce fanatic. And he found that out about me, and he had been making some hot sauces like on the side, just a passion project type of deal. And he packaged up like 3 or 4 of them. And as we were leaving, he was like, hey, I made these hot sauces. I would love for you to try these and give me feedback. Like, I know you love hot sauces, so your opinion really matters to me. We had a phenomenal meal. We had great service. We had great drinks. Thank you for that. But that was like the cherry on top, where I left feeling like this restaurant didn't just want my money. They wanted to make me feel good. And I think that's what you guys are hitting on, is that it's not just that transaction of you give us money, we'll give you drinks, and we'll give you food, but you come into our place and we're going to treat you like this is our home, and we're going to welcome you in and make you feel like you belong here, right?
Correct. I think, I tell a lot of like my new servers and everything as well. Like if you look at a table and treat them like a dollar sign, I'm like, that's like almost the first way out. You have to actually like invest in them. I've had so many people that I figure out who their birthdays are, like with their daughters and everything, buy them gifts, or I have a gentleman that comes in that only drinks decaf and all we have is espresso. So we, picked up a little coffee pot and everything, buy the coffee just for him. And I think that goes above and beyond.
That's
like
really cool. For you guys, what is the most important part in a guest visit?
To me, it's really like how they leave, what their faces look like when they're on their way out. You can really gauge what their entire experience was from their race to the door, or are they stopping to say, thank you to the bartender or the server, or you can just kind of again read it on their faces, like the experience that they just had.
I think it's about creating memories. I had someone one time, they were trying to be smart, and they're like, oh yeah, we want a window view with the beach, and everything. So I literally printed up a little beach thing, hung it by the window, and set them there, and they loved it. They took the picture home. But it's little things like that make the memories. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, completely. And I think, like Melissa kind of hinted at, when they leave is the most important part, because everything leading up to that, you don't always get to control every single detail of the experience, and you can't plan it, and so you have to be ready to be adaptable, with the end goal being when they leave, they're as happy as you could possibly have made them.
How much of a skill is that to grow over time, to be adaptable to every table? Because, I mean, even servers have, several tables that they're attending to at once. You guys as general managers kind of have to have a view of the whole room. You're looking at the guest list at the beginning of the night and trying to map out this whole thing in your head and being like, okay, do I have people with specific allergies? Is decaf guy coming in? Are there regulars that are coming in that I want to make sure that I touch their table a couple times and say hi? How did you develop the skill set to be able to juggle all this in your mind to provide great hospitality to not one or two tables, but the whole dining room at once?
I think that just comes over time. Like, for me, like I started as a cook, and then I got into serving, got into bartending. So the reading people thing, to what she says, but it's really about investment, and just kind of knowing, you can see the whole floor plan, see the allergies and everything, and talk to all the servers and just make sure that's coordinated. But then that's in their hands. So then you have to deal with the unknown. And most of the time it's just going around and doing simple things. The little things are what matter to most people. It's weird, but it is.
Yeah, I think it's something that really does develop over time. I think back to my early serving days, and it's certainly nothing that I could have done then. And I work with some younger servers now, and I see them on that path, but they're just not quite there yet of being able to read a table and provide different levels of service for 3 or 4 different groups of people that you're taking care of throughout the night. I think it also helps that I've got to stay busy, and that's just the way I've been my whole life, and so it's always moving up there anyway, so this just kind of gives it structure.
Yeah, I think that you're both correct in the fact that it does take time to learn and it becomes more natural the longer you do it. But we spend all day planning and looking at the floor plan and being ready for service. But I've learned that you kind of have to expect the unexpected. And with that, you kind of start to be more adaptable in the realm of running the floor for your service crew, of saying, when I see this 7:30 push, I know some people aren't going to show on time, some people are going to be early, some people will be late, we might have a cancellation, so it's constantly changing the whole time. And so I think the biggest part for me is being able to not let it fluster you, because as the leader of the floor and the whole crew, you're kind of responsible for communicating from back of the house to the front of the house to the guest at the table. And if you're not staying calm and in control, expecting the unexpected, try to be prepared for every aspect that could come at you, then you're only setting yourself up for a difficult service.
Controlling the uncontrollable.
Yeah.
Isn't that fun?
It's tough, but the longer you do it, the easier it becomes, the better you can foresee what's coming up and what challenges might present themselves for the night.
One of my favorite books, it's a national bestseller. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara, who is one of the co-owners of 11 Madison Park in New York. He has a quote in this book. He said, "What I'd really like to do is let you in on a little secret, one that the truly great professionals in my business know. Hospitality is a selfish pleasure. It feels great to make other people feel good." Do you guys agree or disagree with that statement?
I would agree. It does feel good when, you can make someone's day, or you have someone that comes in maybe multiple times, and then you can see they're not having the best day, and it's like you kind of know what they like, and you can elevate that and put a smile on their face. That's what you're there for. It's not about serving the food or making the drink or anything like that. It's just they come there, that's their comfort zone, make them feel comfortable.
It is kind of selfish in that regard, because it's something that I kind of latched onto very early on in my career. My favorite thing is to introduce people to flavors they've never had, be it through food, through wine, and seeing their expression the first time that they get to experience that, and sometimes the combination of food and wine, things that they've never thought of putting together before. And so, yeah, I love it. So it is kind of selfish in that way.
Yeah, I don't know that's a great book, by the way. Love that book. But it is kind of selfish to a degree, but I think something that people don't realize is you have to be the type of person that likes working in restaurants to be successful in the front of the house. And for me, I definitely notice it because I'll spend a lot of time at the restaurant, typically anywhere from 9 to 10 a.m., and we don't open until 5:30. And so there's a lot of different parts of my day, but the happiest part of my day is when I get to talk to guests and serve people at the table. And that's when you kind of become selfish, but maybe it's more just self-aware, I would say. Because honestly, if I didn't have that aspect of the job, I wouldn't do what I'm doing.
I think it's selfishly unselfish. Like there's some gray area in there. Yeah, it feels great to have that feeling of like, oh wow, I really just made somebody's night. Good job. But you're also doing it because you genuinely care about the other people and you want to see them have a good time. I want to touch on what you just said, Matt, and that, yeah, the restaurant might not open until the evening, but you're there at 9 or 10 in the morning, which I think a lot of people don't understand. Tell me about that game planning period when you're figuring out, and again, you talked about it, you got to be adaptable, you got to be adjustable. Things are going to happen in service that you can't prepare for. People are going to show up late, people are going to bring too many people to their party. Oh, 2 cooks didn't show up tonight. Our delivery didn't show up. All this stuff. But when you're setting your game plan and trying to prepare the best that you can, what does that look like?
For me, it's a little bit unique because Mertz is a restaurant kind of unlike most. We change our menu all the time, print every day. That's a big part of my job is communicating with the pastry team. The chefs, our head chef John Miller and sous chef Whitney Stanley are amazing and super creative, and it's important that we let them kind of do whatever they want. And so I'm there on the backside to help facilitate that. So it's handy for me to be there all day. But then on the flip side, you're also handling, hopefully, as much as I can, I'm answering the phone between our owner, Jill Panzer, and myself. We're pretty much the only 2 people answering the phone, which helps a lot in planning for that night or for the future because you're getting to speak to the guest from the beginning to the end. It just helps you be better prepared for the entire service. And so it's a side effect of, like, there's some downtime, not a lot of downtime in restaurants, but when you're there early enough, you feel like you're in better control by the time you get to service. And I like to break it up into different parts of the day where I'm kind of trying to remind myself to reset my mentality. And there's definitely organized part of the day, communicating part of the day with the whole staff, and then completely focused on service with guests post 5:30 when we open. It's not easy, but it's fun.
Yeah. I always look at, especially planning the floor on, Friday or Saturday night. It is the most fun because I love puzzles, and it's just like a giant puzzle that you get to kind of put together. But I kind of look at a lot of aspects of running the restaurant like that because of so many unknowns. You don't exactly know what you're going to do that day, which I like.
Well, especially at like Semo, because you don't have Mertz is very small, but even bigger than you guys. So it's like,
right.
When you have to move those pieces around and you just don't have a table, there's physically not a table. You have to be really creative about how you handle that.
We've created tables a couple times, yeah.
I think that's what I like too, is like the split-second decisions that you have to make. Like I think I thrive on that. Like when everyone else comes up to you and you're like, "Oh, what do we do?" And you're like, "Okay, cool." You just like take 2 seconds. You're like, "All right, here's what we're doing. Here's how we're doing it. This is why." Get everyone back on the same page and execute.
I hate to put you on the spot, but do you have an example of like one of those split-second decisions?
Oh yeah, when you have it happens. Maybe a hostess seats a 4-top at the wrong spot because they didn't want that table, so they went to this other table, but you needed it for an 8-top, and then next thing you know, it's like 6 o'clock, and I have no idea where I'm putting them, but I got to put them there. Now I got a 10-top I have to move, and then you're just playing musical tables the whole night. So then you have to be really involved with the host and the seating and everything like that. So, but I try to surround myself with people that are smarter than me and just like can actually jump into the job, and I don't really have to worry too much about what they're doing as far as service goes. I just have to touch base with the tables and make sure everything's going all right. And
yeah, you never know when that's going to change, right? And it's important to surround yourself with people that are really capable at their jobs because you never know what might come up. A story for me during service, I mean, I've gone from everything where fire alarms have gone off in the middle of service on a very, very busy weekend night, and you have to clear the restaurant out because you don't know what's going on, then figure out how you handle that. If you have a team that supports you in doing it, that's the only way to do it successfully.
Communication's key too. Always letting the customer know, the guest, like, hey, here's what's going on. Like, they're more susceptible and open to understanding the situation as to leaving them there and not saying anything at all. So
Yeah. I kind of am a little bit of a chaos goblin, and it's my favorite part of a busy night is where you get to that point of, you have tables that maybe aren't sat in the most optimal place, but figuring that out. And it's probably not a healthy thing to thrive on stress like that, but it is just kind of my personality. So
If you're going to thrive on it, you're in a good role for it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
chaos goblins are perfect for the restaurant. So there's lots of chaos to gobble up. Every restaurant kind of has, I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this. It creates hospitality expectations even when the guests come in. Like, for an example, if I go into Au Courant for a tasting menu on a Friday night, my hospitality expectations are very different than if I'm getting a pizza at Dolomiti, or very different than if I'm getting a rack of ribs at Porky Butts. Those are all great meals, and I enjoy them all, but I go in expecting a very different, not even level of hospitality, but just different forms of hospitality. How does a restaurant create those expectations so a guest feels like the hospitality is right? Like, if I went into Porky Butts and every time I went to the bathroom they replaced my napkin, I'd probably be like, that's kind of weird. But that's something I've experienced it, something you guys do at your restaurants. How do you kind of set the tone for the guest with the level of hospitality that they're going to expect?
I don't think anyone that goes anywhere expects a certain level of hospitality. I think they expect in like their mindset a level of service, and that's what sets us apart is reading that. So like if you have a couple on date night, you give them the same standard, like the same beautiful service that you can and the hospitality as much, but you're going to invest in someone else a little bit more because they want to have a good time, joke and laugh. So you're going to read into them, learn more about them. I think expectations are kind of slighted in some way. Like if you always go in having these high hopes, like then if they're not met, you're going to have that level of disappointment. But if you just go in expecting basic service, which a lot of people mainly do, then we create that level of, oh my God, wow, that wow factor. Like they went and they did this and they remembered that, or I just got back from Colorado, little innuendos like that. So.
Yeah, I think for V Mertz, it's important for us that we set a high bar of level of service and our coordination together as a staff. We're a little bit unique in the fact that we like our servers to run their own tables and give everybody their own unique experience. And so I let the servers have a lot of flexibility, but there are guidelines that they have to meet. And we have that basic palette that we start off of where our service is going to be great no matter what. But we don't really go further until somebody gives us the impression that they want us to. If they want us to talk more about food, if they want to do personalized wine pairings, or if they invite you into the conversation. But to a degree, you kind of have to wait until that guest gives you that key and gives you that sign that they're wanting that kind of different experience. And so some tables are perfectly happy with our kind of quiet, out of the way, just making sure you have a great meal and focusing on your conversation with your dinner guests. And other guests come in wanting us to wow them and have the chefs bring things out and set stuff on fire in some cases. We don't do that very often, but every once in a while, what it might be, you can kind of elevate that experience, but you have to set a really high level of expectation with your staff, but one that also gives the guest the time to be able to tell us where they want to be personalized.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. In your examples, to me, like walking away from any one of those situations, you should always feel like you had, you experienced great hospitality, but the levels of service were different. Mm-hmm. To your point, I wouldn't expect eating at Porky Butts, like every course I'm going to get fresh silverware or multiple courses. But I would still want to walk away with that like warm and welcomed feeling.
What you guys just talked about was really fascinating to me, in that it's so important that the server reads the table. and understands what to expect. So like if a dedicated like foodie who's just obsessed with food goes to a restaurant, sending something out from the kitchen that is a little bit exotic or something that the chef is excited about, that's going to make my day. If you did that with my parents, they would be like, what is, I don't understand this. I don't want tartare. This is raw beef? What's happening here? Like, you have to be able to read that table quickly and understand what are they hoping to get out of tonight. How do you train staff to kind of have that intuition?
It's not easy. It's a lot, kind of like what we talked about earlier. It's a lot of experience will lead you there. And you give them guidelines. Most restaurants at Mertz, we keep notes on diner experiences over the past. So a lot of times you know when they're coming in what they've done in the past and how they like to go. But when you don't, you just have to be really adept at reading that table and kind of knowing ways that you can find out from that guest by asking them the right questions. For us, we're obviously pretty wine driven. And so as a sommelier, it's one of those things where it's really important for me to be able to read that guest. And so there are key questions to ask to kind of figure out, well, how much wine do you drink? And it's an intimidating experience to be in a restaurant. If you're not a big wine drinker, but you want to drink wine, but you don't know the terminology, it's key for me to be able to say, I can tell that this is a first time, and let me kind of take over and introduce you the right way without implying to them that it's the first time they've had a tasting menu. And so it's something you pick up over time, but you try to teach the staff as best you can. And a lot of that is just shadowing at the beginning and making sure that you have continuing education. Having conversations with your staff is really important for that, because it's easy to forget about things like any job, but it's also easy to kind of become frustrated unless you have the ability to talk to the rest of the crew about it. And so it's kind of important to make sure that you have an open door and you're kind of encouraging conversation about service problems that might come up or really great service experiences and what you might be able to do to help continue that in the future.
Yeah, working in a smaller space, 95% of the time, I am the one that you talk to make your reservation. I'm the first person that greets you when you come in. I'm the one that takes you to your table. And so I kind of have an advantage where, having done this and kind of honed that skill, I kind of know what questions to ask in that very short interaction of us walking from the front of the restaurant to your table to kind of gauge what kind of experience you want to have, and helping pass that along to the servers. And it's also very helpful that it's a small enough restaurant where even if no one's coming in or the phone's not ringing, if I'm standing up front, I can see every diner in the restaurant and pick up on those things and help those servers kind of pick up on those things to hone their skills.
See, I think I look for like dynamic personalities. I like people that are outgoing, different, because I want everyone to be able to express themselves. But it comes down to trying to figure out their experience, the guest experience. You're going to know that within a few minutes. You're going to read the body language, the energy. And it's up to them to pick that up. And sometimes you give people an experience that they weren't expecting. And that's, like I said, I go back to the wow factor, but that's just kind of like what I try to create, what I want like my servers to create. It's like you go in there expecting one thing, like you said, porky butts or something, and then you get wowed by something else. And it's just that little highlight that just lingers in your mind on the drive home. And you're like, okay, we got to go back.
Let's talk about that wow factor, because I'm going to go back to Unreasonable Hospitality. I love this book so much. He has a concept in the book. It's called, they called those things legends. So he gave examples of like, there was a couple that was staying nearby, and the restaurant, the servers overheard that they were staying at this nearby hotel, and this was like a special night for them. They found out where they were staying. They delivered champagne to their hotel room and left them a note that was signed by like the servers. It was like, thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of your night. Things like that just go over the top. How do you, like, I'm amazed that restaurants are able to do this, because so much is going on. I mean, you were talking about the puzzle that was being played with, okay, there's a 4 top here. This person's coming in. We're going to need a 10 top. I mean, that's enough to like already just bamboozle my mind. And then to think about every table, like, and not, you can't do this for every table, but like trying to look for those moments all over the dining room where we can create a special experience. How do you do that? How do you identify those moments where you can deliver a quote unquote legend?
It's really by being an observer. Because people, they are interacting, with whoever they're out to dine with. They're not really thinking of what maybe anyone around them is overhearing, and that sounds kind of creepy. But you'll hear phrases as you walk through the dining room, and it's just a little sticky note in your brain of, oh, I need to look into this. If you overhear someone say that, oh, it's their birthday, and they didn't have that in their reservation, they didn't mention it, no one mentioned it when they made the reservation, but if you hear an offhand comment like that, well then, okay, cool. I know now I can do something that is going to elevate their experience here.
Yeah, I think both of you have already kind of mentioned it before too, where when you're observing or just on the floor, you can kind of gauge it as you're going, and you notice if somebody, for me, a lot of times it might be I hear somebody really likes something they tried, whether it's food or beverage, and then saying, oh, how can I fortify that and maybe bring them something they haven't had before that's in that same realm. And so it doesn't always have to be completely over the top. There are times that, luckily with online reservation systems now, usually they have an email address and you can say, oh, I know that company and I know somebody that works there. Let me text them real quick and find out if I can find a special detail about it and something that they might really love and have it at the table when they get there without them expecting it, right? There's a lot of different ways you can go about it, but it's definitely one of the most rewarding parts when you can hit on it, but you can't do it for every table, like Ron was kind of saying.
Yeah, I would agree. I think each day is different. It's like the other night we had a 10-top girl. I think there was one guy at the table, but it was celebrating this girl's birthday, and this girl comes in all the time and always brings a different guest, but it was her birthday. So all I had to do was just make it a point to make it special, really just say happy birthday. Obviously, there was a little bit more involved, but I didn't really have to go back to that table. It just wowed them. They thought, oh my God, she's so special, blah, blah, blah. And then you just kind of move on and you just take your time and yeah.
I guess you just gave me a great example. I'm going to ask for another example. What's an example of a time where you guys really went over the top with a guest, and not only, again, this kind of goes back to the selfish, unselfish thing, but you were kind of like, hey, I did something really cool there. I just made their night, their day, whatever it might be. Can you give me an example?
There was my third time back at Dante. So in between that stint, I worked somewhere else, but I met this family, 2 girls. They had 2 daughters and whatnot, and I learned their birthdays. I learned what they were into, and when they made their first reservation at Dante, I made sure that before they got there, everything was set on the table with their drinks, everything, and so all they had to do was show up, sit down, and I think the girls colored me something and wrote something, but it's little things like that that just kind of make it special, especially I know probably Mertz doesn't have a whole lot of kids, but when you have kids, if you can kind of sometimes invest in them a little bit, it helps give the parents a little bit of one-on-one time, and they appreciate that too. So,
for us, I guess it's hard for me to say one particular experience that I think stands out over the rest, because it is something that I make it a personal goal that if a guest has a great time and leaves without knowing my name, it's actually something that makes me very happy, because I want them to just be enjoying each other's company. But there's definitely a few times where, luckily, I've become friends with everybody in the old market. So if I know a guest is leaving to go to the Berry and Rye across the way, I can reach out to Luke, who runs the Berry and Rye, and say, hey, these guys are coming in. Can you set them up with, this is what they had, can you set them up with this? And when it's there, let them know it's from me. And that kind of thing of trying to surprise people in an unexpected way is when I kind of find that the joy of it, when you can kind of make somebody's day better. It's not about being completely over the top, but luckily at Mertz we get to try to do that. That's kind of one of the fun parts about coming there. The more we get to know you, or the more background info I can get, the more I can kind of heighten that experience. And for me, it's nothing that's ever been too crazy. Mostly just little surprises like that. I don't think I could think of anything that was like somebody jumping out of a cake or anything like that, but it's about doing those little things that are unexpected for people, whether it be having their favorite bottle of wine that we don't normally have, but you know that they love it and you kind of surprise them with it, or asking somebody, like I said, a lot of times it's about having contacts that know them and being able to kind of find out some background info without them knowing, and catering a meal to them. And at Mertz, it's something that we get to do quite often. We personalize menus every day, so it's kind of the fun part about the job.
Yeah, we also do a lot of menu personalization as much as I can. Like the one example that pops up in my mind, this woman had made a reservation, and in the note she just put that her husband had kind of dropped the ball on their anniversary. Her father.
She left that in the notes?
She did.
It's a little salty.
I think she was a little upset when she made the reservation.
Long ride home.
Yeah. Her father had also dropped the ball with her mother, and so they were coming out. It was 3 generations of women to have a dinner and celebrate their anniversary on their own. And I was just like, okay, we're going to make this a night that they are never going to forget. And we sent out some extra courses, kind of to the point where I think they were a little freaked out, because it just wasn't a way that they were used to dining, and I could tell. And I went over at the end. I sent them home each with a little bottle of sparkling wine as a final toast. And I just said, thank you so much for coming out tonight. And that is when the grandmother just looked at me and said, this has been amazing. We don't get to go out together hardly ever, and especially like this. And I just knew this was going to be a dinner that started off on a bad note, but turned into something that these ladies were never going to forget.
And the beauty of it is, some guests do want to be wowed, and they want to have somebody jump out of a cake or whatever it is. They want to have a beach printed up on the wall next to them. That's the type of thing that gets them going. But it doesn't have to be a grand gesture that makes someone's night. It's all about reading the guest. I will give an example. I will never forget this. This was in I believe it was 2019. So I had just started doing this podcast. I was not very well known. I was just kind of a dude with a blog on the internet. And we came into Dante. And it was probably Sarah and I's third or fourth time into Dante. So we were fans, but not to the point where I think we'd be recognized or anything. And about halfway through the meal, that guy right over there, Chef Nick Strawhecker, who owns the place, comes out, and he introduced himself, and he said hi, and he was like, Dan, I'm a fan of your work. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We appreciate you being here. You guys could have served me just a plate of old smelly socks after that, and I would have left the night having just a wonderful time. Sarah can tell you, I was over the moon. I thought that was so cool. And I think Nick's an amazing person. He might not have that effect on every table, but for me, that was perfect. That I got a chance, just some dude got a chance to talk to the chef who owns the place and cooked this amazing food, or taught people how to cook this amazing food. That was better than anything that could have been done for me. So sometimes it is a grand gesture. Sometimes it's as simple as just figuring out that it's somebody's birthday, printing out a special menu, and just saying, happy birthday, Sarah, at the top of it. And that immediately just starts a meal where it's this place saw me.
Well, it's being noticed, being heard.
Yes, exactly.
A little affirmation right there goes a long way.
Yeah. Popular phrase, the customer is always right.
Nope.
What do you guys think about that? Okay, Ron, you're first. Go.
I mean, good golly. I don't even know where to go with this, so I might get in trouble. Hopefully I got a job tomorrow. Yes and no. I mean, have realistic expectations, like you said. But, no, they're not always right. Is there our job to make sure that they're okay, and by the time, like Matt said, when they leave the door, that they're happy? Yes, absolutely. Does that mean they're always right? No. God, no. But we do whatever. We're the little buffer between them and the server, between them and anyone else, and between them and their experience. And we literally have to, quote unquote, negotiate to make sure, they're happy. And I don't mean negotiate, give them this, give them that. It's just, like I said, some people just want to be heard. But no, they're not always right. Just like you're not, and I'm not, and she's not.
I'm not.
Nah.
I'm mostly wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm rarely right.
Right? So, but yeah.
I think it is important, though, when you're talking with guests, is you kind of do treat it that way, to where you have to change your focus to not about being right, because their opinion is their opinion, and it's not my job to change it all the time. Now, if I can gradually over the course of a meal, I think there are sometimes, especially when you do tasting menus, you see people that come in kind of hangry, if you will, because they wait to eat all day because they're like, I'm going to have this big meal, and you can sense it, and you can feel it, and so you change your pace of the meal a little bit to say, oh, this person I can tell is a little bit grumpy, and maybe I can help shift their mentality a little bit if I get bread service out to them before the meal gets going. It's not necessarily about thinking right or wrong, but more so how can I shift their perspective in a subtle way without them knowing I'm doing it.
Yeah. And I think it's just as important to observe those guests that maybe aren't having the best time as much as you observe people that are out to have the best time. And just to kind of recognize that and to be able to shift that is the best feeling. When I was a server, often I would kind of get called in if there was a trouble table and they were not getting along with their server. I would kind of come in and be the cooler server and take over. And it's just, I want people to, by the time they leave, even if they came in the worst hangry mood for whatever, to turn that completely around. And sometimes there are people that are just, doesn't matter what you do, they're not going to be happy. They weren't happy when they walked in the door. They're not going to be happy when they wake up the next morning. And sometimes then that's just the conversation that you have. It's I'm sorry that this wasn't for you.
That might be one of the more challenging parts about the job. There are times that you can come up against it. Luckily, I don't think any of us deal with it too often because we're at all great restaurants. But there are times that you have a service that there was nothing you could do to make that experience better for somebody. And it's hard to draw that line of saying at the end of the night, I have to be able to drop that so I can be the best I can be at home for family, for friends, then also coming back in the next day feeling re-energized. It's a really challenging part of the industry, and I think in the front of the house, a lot of people don't think about how hard that can be. If you're somebody who's kind of a little bit of, not necessarily sensitive, but you're paying attention to everybody's experience all day, you can internalize it and blame it on yourself when it's really hard to kind of get over that. It's a big thing I try to teach younger people in the industry on how to move on beyond that, because it's not always your fault, and sometimes there's nothing you could have done. You're completely right.
Right, and I think that's harder for servers too, as opposed to us, because they're the ones that are actually there the whole time during that. It's oh my God, no matter what I do, they're just not happy. They came in this way, don't know if they had a bad day, and then that kind of just floats back to give them our standard of service, let them deal with them, make sure everything we're hitting is our standard, and then go spend time over here and make this person's day. Get to know them. Whatever's going on there, there's only so much you can do, You can only juggle so much. But I agree with both.
Do any of you guys watch the TV show The Bear?
I love it.
They stole my term.
One of our servers, actually, in the first season, he was working in Chicago still. I give him a tough time all the time because they filmed it next door to, he was bartending at a bar that was right next door to the building they filmed at. And you can see his head in one of the episodes when he was out for a smoke break, above the fence and back. And so Derek Fox, if anybody knows him, I always give him a tough time because I noticed it after watching the first season. I thought it was pretty funny. But the show does a really good job of capturing how intense emotions and things can be in a restaurant. Maybe it's a little over the top, but every show that's good kind of has to be that way. It's like watching a medical show. It's not going to be exactly the same as what happens at a hospital every day, but I think most people in the service industry either love it or it gives them anxiety. It just depends on which aspect you come from.
Well, I wanted to ask you guys about a specific episode. There's an episode, it's called Forks. It's probably the most well-known episode. I think it's won awards. But the quick synopsis is, in the show, they are transforming this Italian beef restaurant into a fine dining restaurant. And one of the line cooks, he's a hardened line cook, his name is Richie. And they're trying to teach him the importance of, hey, here's how we're going to do things at a fine dining level. So they send him to do a stage, which is basically an unpaid internship, at a fictional fine dining restaurant called Ever. And he comes in and he thinks it's totally stupid, and they're making him clean all the forks, and he's like, why are we doing this? I don't understand. Like, this is dumb. And by the end of the episode, he is completely flipped around, and he is just, because he's seen the power of some of the legends that have been performed, or just the way where people have come in and they've been grumpy and they've left so happy, and he almost like has a high based off of that. Did you guys have similar experiences in your career where your eyes were kind of opened to just the power that hospitality could have in not only in your life, but in other people's lives as well?
I could say, I don't know, my life gets blurred, but in other people's lives, yes, there has been an impact, and I think that's what I feed off of. I could go on and on, list names, like all the silly and dumb stuff that I've done with guests just to make their day, but I would agree with that, yeah. There's a passion that you feel that, check the box, next.
Yeah, I don't think Richie's like my favorite character.
Oh, he's awesome. Yeah.
When I first started at Semo, I was like driving out there, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm going to be Richie. I remember it was sort of that transformation. Of course, it wasn't as neat and tidy as 45 minutes, but you do realize the importance of those small steps to build up to a bigger thing. And I feel like everyone at one point when they start in this business, it's just a job. And either it turns into an obsession and a passion for you, or you don't work there very long. I think every one of us that has been in the industry for a long period of time has had that transition happen.
Yeah, I mean, you have to naturally love doing what you do. I had for sure had that one moment, and it was early, and the reason I stayed in restaurants for my whole career and will for forever. I was serving a table at a restaurant I worked at. I ran a restaurant in Lincoln called Blue Orchid. It's a Thai restaurant downtown, and it was early on, and I was working in the back of the house and the front of the house this day, and we were short-staffed, and the restaurant got swamped. There was something going on downtown. And I remember at that time just feeling awful about this one particular table of two ladies that had come in for their first time, and they didn't really know Thai food, and normally I would get to have a better conversation with them. And I remember just feeling terrible the whole time and trying to make it up to them. And I got to the end of the meal, and they pulled me over to the host stand specifically, and I was like, I feel so terrible, I'm going to go apologize to them. And they cut me off and said, no, this is the best meal we've ever had. And it was a really quick thing to shift my perspective to say, oh, I realize that if I just genuinely care about trying my best to make their experience great, they're going to appreciate it. And most times that's the case, 99% of the time. And that's definitely the moment I had. It was 2 months after I started as a host, and I never looked back from there.
Well, you guys all work in very solid restaurants that I don't really think that this is a problem at, but in other restaurants, either that you've worked at or that you know people that work there, is there a separation between front and back of house?
As far as what?
Almost like it's two different teams. You're ultimately going towards the same goal, but like front of house is complaining, back of house, we're not getting our food fast enough. My customers are complaining. Front of house or back of house is just like, these guys are being so demanding. I would
say almost in any restaurant, regardless of whether you're an elevated restaurant or not, There's always going to be front of house versus back of house. There's always going to try to be AM versus PM. The key is, like, especially like here at Dante, it's like, I don't do the drama. I don't do that back and forth. I let them know right now that is the expectation. It's kind of like the expediter, the little piece in the hourglass that talks front of house and back of house communication. It's just kind of setting that standard. But it is the industry. There are times things get a little elevated and heated, but it's just like at the end of the day, everyone's good. Yeah, you move on.
Are there tactics because you guys are leading that front of house crew, are there tactics that you can employ to kind of ease that tension and really like you said, Ron, it's always going to be two teams. They are performing separate duties. It's natural that there's going to be some feelings there sometimes, but are there ways as the leader of that front of house team to kind of smooth that over and make things more cohesive?
Yeah, with Dante, what I try to do is I try to make it a family environment. Like, everyone that works there is a family. No one wants someone crying in the car or anything before they have to go into the job. Yes, in a family, there's going to be arguments. There's going to be bickering. But just knowing that everyone's on that same page and knowing that regardless of what was said or done, I have your back, you have mine. We're here to do one job. Let's get it done. We can work this out later if it needs to be. Then, that's my mindset. And I think a lot of my staff carries that mindset, which makes it super easy on me. Like, everyone, I think one of my servers thanked me for being a great manager, and I was like, it's not me, it's you guys. Like, thank you for doing what you do to make my job easier. And that's my appreciation towards it. And I think if you can encompass that and just have everyone have that mentality, then you're doing pretty good.
In my experience, Semo is truly the first restaurant I've ever worked at where there isn't a front of house, back of house. It's everyone truly is working towards the same goal of every guest having a fantastic experience. And it's something that we talk about a lot. We do have the benefit of being a small enough team where, sure, there are things that are going to come up, but everyone feels comfortable enough with each other to sort of like air those grievances and just like move on. Because at the end of the day, all of our goal ultimately is for every guest to leave having had the best experience that they've had at a restaurant every time. And it's truly been amazing to see, because I was in the business for a while, and then I took about an 8-year hiatus and worked for a wine distributor. And then coming back, I wasn't sure if I really wanted to work in a restaurant again because of my past experiences working with chefs and owners, and it wasn't necessarily great. But Drew called me up and said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't really know what I want to do." And so it's like, well, let's just see how this goes for now. And I love it. And I've told him before, it kind of feels like it's the least serious but most serious place I've ever worked, where we do truly have a fantastic time and we're friends. And at the end of the day, we'll sit down at the bar, we'll talk about things that maybe didn't go great, things that we did do that went really well. But everyone is truly there for the guest experience. Front of house, back of house, dishwasher, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, completely correct. I think an important part about leading the team and connecting the front of the house and back of the house is making sure that you stay calm first and foremost. If you're in that position of being in charge and being the one that brings the two together, you have to lead by example and not be, when you're frustrated, you can't show the frustration. But also it's about setting high levels of high expectations of professionalism. For us, that's definitely something that's implied right away for all employees, is saying this is a profession and we treat it that way and we take it seriously. And like Ron said, you just kind of have to set that expectation right away and don't allow for people to slip from it, and then keep an open level of communication with everybody so that when you do come across problems, you know how to solve it and you're not afraid to talk to each other. Because when you let people not everybody's always going to get along or see each other eye to eye on a lot of things. And so you have to really lean on your leaders in both the front of the house and the back of the house to kind of continue and perpetuate that professionalism throughout the entire staff. I treat it a lot like when you're watching football, you have offense and defense, and sometimes I'm a Bears fan, so this is very true. Sometimes your defense will carry you and the offense might not be there, and then other times the offense has to pick it up and win the game at the end, and that's the whole goal, is learning how to support each other in the best way, because you are kind of focused on different things, but in the long run you have to come together to make everything work perfectly.
100%.
This is very well said. Last question I got for you here, guys. How have you seen dining culture evolve in recent years, and how has that shifted your approach to hospitality?
Ooh,
That's a good question.
And end on a real deep one, yeah.
I don't think it's that deep. And like in my mind, I think the evolution has always been there. It's always been evolving. It's where you fall in the picture and just how you look. Like, it's your perception on how you look at it, and that way you can convey it, to your team. Like I said, mine's very family oriented. Got the best staff, that I can ever ask for. Front of house, back of house, let's have fun. When it's go time, it's go time. I think, me personally, just like, I don't even know where I'm going with this, but everyone being themselves is the best way in my mindset. I don't want a robot, and there's corporate places that do that. Everything's very structured, very detail-oriented. You're always going to have that. But I think, the non-corporate, the mom and pop kind of places, that's where you get that warm feeling when you walk in the door. You can almost just sense it. For me, the most important job in the front of house is your host. That's your first and last impression. That's very big. Everything else, I don't want to say falls in the crack, because that's huge and where the experience happens. But I think the evolution has just kind of always been there. It's always been a sink or swim mentality, and we swim.
For me, it was really different leaving the restaurant side of things pre-COVID and then returning post-COVID. It does feel very different, but I also think that it feels different because I'm in a different sort of environment, much to like what I alluded to previously. But it's really interesting as a manager on both sides of that, where before I feel like I had to be a little bit more of an enforcer and hold things up to a higher level, and kind of like, if there was the bad guy, I was going to be the bad guy, and that's fine with staff. But now it's like, there doesn't need to be a bad guy, and that's really refreshing. And I think that sort of culture seeps through everything that we do, and it goes into the dining room, and it really kind of sets a different expectation than what I would think from working in restaurants prior.
I could talk about this for a really long time, so I'm going to try to keep it short, because having grown up in Omaha and Papillion and going to school in Lincoln and coming back to Omaha, I've seen it change quite a bit, and actually in the best way possible. And there are two really important parts of that for me. The quality of restaurants that are available in Omaha, I think not even us that live here are aware of how great that actually is for the amount of people that we have in this city. I've seen more restaurants over the last 15 years open up in Omaha that have the higher expectations that you would not expect to see in other cities. And they just keep doing it. And it's really great and amazing to see. And a lot of that has to do with the culinary school, the ICA at Metro Community College, really important in trying to bring people into that. But also perpetuating it in a way where not being afraid to work with your fellow restaurants. I mean, it's both everybody up here. We've done things together. We dine at each other's restaurants. We give each other advice. We try to lift everybody else up. Inside of that, the locally owned restaurants have increased their quality of dining experience so well that our diners even now expect a better experience where they're better educated and they're coming along with the restaurants. The last 15 years, I've seen a huge change in evolution in the restaurants. That's not to say anything bad, because I still love to go see Alfie at Casio's. Growing up eating caniglias and venison and things like that, I have a soft spot for that. But it's cool to see the restaurants kind of continue to adapt and give a wider diversity of dining experiences, and every single time opening at a higher level. Every time you go somewhere, it's kind of fun to see and watch, and the whole thing is about being a community and being sure that we perpetuate that and lead the next generation coming in.
I couldn't agree more. And if you ever want to talk about that all day, you have my ear, my friend. And that's my favorite kind of conversation is Omaha restaurant conversation. But just due to time constraints, we're going to have to cut it off tonight, which kills me because this has been such a fantastic conversation. You guys have all just really brought some amazing insights. There's so much more that I want to ask you, but I just thank you for not only coming here tonight and being a part of this panel, but just for being passionate about providing great service. And it goes back to what we said at the beginning, not just making each guest a transaction, not seeing me come in the door and be like, oh, there's a $50 bill right there if I do my job well, or there's a, whatever % tip, but saying there's somebody that I have the chance to delight tonight. And I'm going to try and figure out how to do that. You guys are all experts at it. Thank you so much for being a part of this panel tonight and for just sharing your knowledge. It's very much appreciated.
You're more than welcome.
Yeah.
I feel like
an
part
honor.
2
Yeah,
should be
thank you.
coming.
Let's do it. Yes. Omaha, as always, thanks for eating with us.